There's been talk recently in the media about if World War III breaks out, we don't have enough troops in the UK now because there aren't enough people joining up, and so they'd have to bring back conscription. But I mean, the same issue that's stopping people from wanting to join the army in the first place is going to prevent people from ever going along with conscription. I think they'd have a hell of a hard time getting anyone now to fight for this country on both sides of the political spectrum, on the left and the right. Because left-wing people don't tend to really like our culture and our history and want it changed, so they have no real sense of loyalty or patriotism to the country. And right-wing people feel that their culture and history is being appropriated and shat all over all the time, and that the country's not the country they grew up in and that they loved. And so both sides of the political spectrum have no sense of patriotism anymore, to the point where they're going to want to fight and put their lives on the line for the country. I highly doubt any of our new arrivals are going to want to fight for the country. I don't think they have enough loyalty or fealty or patriotic feelings towards this country to fight for it. They need to stay in their own countries to fight to improve them, let alone fighting for ours. So you've literally got a country full of people now who do not like the place enough to fight for it. A lot of people just don't like the UK, people who live here, on every side of the political argument. So how the hell are you going to get anyone to go out to war? There's also a growing knowledge of how globalists are running everything. I think people are becoming more aware of that and are not likely to want to fight just to line the pockets of globalists, go out and be cannon fodder for rich globalists who don't give a shit about us. Never mind the fact that we've got an unelected Prime Minister at the minute. I mean, who's going to go out to war following an unelected Prime Minister that nobody likes or wants in office? Ridiculous. It doesn't particularly feel like we have any borders here anyway, so what are we fighting for? We don't even defend our own borders anymore. Patriotism has been stamped out by the media and government and police. Politicians, councillors, the media, for years now, they've had quite a scoffing attitude, a kind of eye-rolling attitude towards anything too patriotic. I think there have even been incidents of the police kind of reporting people for these nonsense non-crime incidents if they have an English flag because it offended someone. So in a country where you can barely fly the English flag without having the media roll their eyes at you and potentially a knock on the door from the police to register you for a non-crime incident, once again, who's going to have any feelings of patriotism to go off to war? I also question how wise it was for that military guy to come out in the media and say, yeah, the English army's fucked, we don't have enough soldiers to defend ourselves. That doesn't seem strategically sound to make that known to the world, how weak and how vulnerable we are. But it feels to a lot of us like we're in a country that treats us like the enemy all the time. You get a real feeling that the government, the media, the police couldn't give a shit about us and hold us in contempt. I mean, just this week there have been 2 examples of the police acting with contempt towards the public. There's this YouTuber, I think it's called Mr. Boogie Woogie or something like that. He plays piano and films it for YouTube. And he was filming in London in a train station in a public area where you're allowed to film on a piano that anyone can play. I think it was actually donated by Elton John. And a couple of Chinese people walked by in the background and took exception to him filming because he caught them walking by. Now bear in mind they were in London, so that's one of the most surveilled cities in the world. They were filmed pretty much 24/7 while they were here. But for some reason him filming seemed to offend them and they kicked up a fuss, which is a great example of the Streisand effect. Like if they'd just shut the fuck up and walked on by, no one would have noticed or cared that they were there. But as it is, because they kicked off and caused a scene, now millions of people, like 10 million plus people, have viewed that video and know they were there. But the police came along and of course, as per standard, took the completely wrong stance, and one of the police officers, this elderly woman, I don't know how the hell she's still a beat cop. I mean, she looks like she's in her 60s, but she started telling this guy, you can't do this, you can't do that. None of which was legal. You know, she was just making up rules off the top of her head. She wasn't actually quoting laws to him. She's just saying to him, you can't do this, you can't do that. Even though he actually can, by law. And luckily he stood up for himself. But then, a few days later, there's another incident of a woman who was singing outside her church. And this time it wasn't even a proper policeman, it was one of these special constables who are people who volunteer to do police work. Like, you know they're going to be assholes. If someone, they don't even want to be paid, they're happy to just go out and do police work for free. You know they're going to be on a power trip. And she started telling this woman, you can't sing, you can't sing. And when the woman stood up for herself, this special constable stuck her tongue out at her, like a child. Living up to the name special constable, I suppose. But it's literally just in the space of a week. You've got 2 examples of the UK police showing utter contempt for us. And a bit of a totalitarian attitude. Well, who's going to want to go fight for that then? But the thing is, the prisons are chock-a-block full in the UK anyway, so I don't know how they would even enforce it. You can't lock us all up, and I highly doubt there's going to be many people that are going to willingly go along with conscription. So I think it would be unenforceable anyway. There may be a level of fear-mongering with all this conscription talk, but Western society is definitely failing at the minute. And that's going to lead to something bad, whether it be World War III or the UK becoming like China or being taken over by a 5th column and forcing a different culture and way of life on us. I think something, probably the last 2 I mentioned are the most likely, but something's going to become of it all because Western society is definitely failing. But the thing is, it's a slow process. I think a lot of people think if some kind of disastrous apocalypse like that's going to happen, something drastically different, it almost happens overnight, but it doesn't. It's a very slow process, and we've seen it gradually coming to pass over the last few years, the last 5 years in particular. It's really accelerated. I'm quite pessimistic about what's going to become of us. Well, I wouldn't want to fight for this country now, I've got to admit. 10 years ago, probably would have, but not now. It's sad really to feel that way. But what about you guys? How do you feel about it all? Do you feel patriotic enough still to want to fight for the country? Are you happy with the way the UK is now? To the point where you'd happily put your life on the line to defend it? Let me know in the comments.